Talk Sheet. Recorded live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Let's Run's Track Talk. This is your fearless host, Robert Johnson. What an exciting show we have for you today. Track and Field's opening day officially is tomorrow with the Doha Diamond League, but we have much more than Doha to talk about. What a weekend. You must be in heaven if you're a track and field fan, distance running fan, because we've got starting tonight a little preseason action with the Stanford invite, actually the Payton Jordan meet at Stanford. Doha is tomorrow. And then, of course, on Sunday, Galen Rupp runs the Prague Marathon. So much to get to. And not only that, we have a lot of controversy to get underneath as well. Asbel Kiprop, the greatest 1,500-meter runner of this generation, has tested positive for EPO. And we're going to get into that. And, of course, also, what would a show be without some huge USATF controversy? In my mind, maybe my biggest outrage of the weekend, USATF has decided to take the trials away from Mount Sac and reopening the bid. Very suspicious to me. We'll get into that throughout the show. But breaking it all down for you, we're going to have Let'sRun.com staff writer Jonathan Galt, as well as my co-founder, Weldon Johnson. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Good to be here. I think we should play some funeral music first.
Yes, in future shows, I'm sure we'll have the sound bites to make the podcast sound more professional. But very exciting. So, guys, there's so much to talk about. We only have an hour to do it, and it took us 5 minutes to get on the air, so about 50 minutes. I thought the best way to handle this would be just to sort of go in chronological order. We'll take the meets, Stanford, Doha, and Prague in that order. But let's talk about the big story of the day, Asbel Kiprop. It came out yesterday. He has tested positive, apparently for EPO. Really, I guess the day before, right, guys, we started getting texts saying, have you heard anything about a big Kenyan testing positive? And I hadn't. And then slowly but surely, they started getting many more momentum. And then it came out yesterday that it was indeed Kiprop. But Jonathan, when you heard the news, what were your first thoughts?
Well, like you, Robert, I wasn't totally shocked because we had heard some rumblings that it might be Kiprop. They had said it was a multi-time world champion, I think, or a very big name. And, there are only a couple of people who fit the bill, and Kiprop's name had floated up. So I wasn't entirely shocked when the news broke, but, I was disappointed. I think sometimes you see someone get busted. I think when Sumgon got busted, I was not surprised. I was sort of like, yeah, that kind of adds up. She had trained with Jep2. There were questions about her after winning the Olympics. That one, I was glad that someone who I thought could have been a fraud was a fraud, And whereas with Kiprop, I don't know, I really like watching the guy run. We've called him majestic many times. It's the 1500 is one of my favorite events, and Kiprop's been the best guy for basically the past decade. And if it turns out that he was on drugs, obviously I want that out there and I want him punished and banned. But it also makes me think how much of this that I watched was genuine, and to have those memories tainted if it turns out that he is, a cheat, that's disappointing. But as we know, after his statement today, that may not be the case. We're not entirely sure right now.
Yes, and if you haven't read the statement, it's up on the front page. We have it, and it's issued a 20 bullet points alleging improprieties in the test. He says, first of all, he was notified that he would be tested the night before his actual test, which is a violation of anti-doping protocol. But we've heard about this many times in the past, that this is pretty standard procedure. In Kenya, people get told the night before when they're going to have a test. The tester showed up. He said they asked for payment. He did send them payment. And actually, apparently there's verification of this payment because he used an electronic payment method called M-Pesa to record the payment. And he said he went into the other room looking for cash initially so that the sample was left in the drug tester's hands without him seeing it be sealed. So it's possible that it could have been tampered with at that point in time. So very, very interesting. I mean, as we said at the bottom of the article, to me, if they tampered, I don't know how you tamper. I don't know enough about EPO testing, but it seems to me to be harder to tamper with a test and put EPO in the vial than it would be to sort of put some steroids in there. But if you're an expert, maybe put that on the message board or in the chat box and let us know what you think. If you want to join in the call, you can call in via TalkShoe. The phone number is on the client, and we can add you to the call and take a few callers. If you want to do that, why don't you send me a text message first send me your screen name and tell us what you want to talk about so we can know when to put you on the call. The text line is 410-929-3368, 410-929-3368, or you can post in the forum on the thread there what your name is and what you want to talk about. We'll try to add you to the call. But, I think Kiprop's theory is, hey, they tipped me off. Why would I be an EPO? I knew the night before the test. I could have just skipped the test.
Well, we may have lost Robert here.
I'll just take over then. I'm not sure what happened to Robert, but yeah, you guys are talking about your immediate thoughts. My immediate thoughts when Kiprop tested positive. First, I thought back to I want to know if you have the same thoughts I did. I thought back to the Rio Olympic press conference. And I swear I remember Nick Willis saying something about like, oh, well, we did it right. And these guys do it right. And I looked in the Let's Run, recap of that, and I couldn't find anything there about that. It didn't even make the recap. But do you remember Nick saying anything along those lines?
I don't remember him saying that specifically, and it would have been an interesting statement to make given that he was sharing the podium with Taufik Makhloufi, who people have questions about him. But I do think in my conversations with Willis before, he's never come out and outright said, I thought Asbel was doping, but he has sort of suggested that certain athletes who beat him in prominent races, may not have been clean. And I think one of the people I thought of whenever he would make those comments was Kiprop in the 2008 Olympic final. And, again, Nick's too classy a guy to come out and outright lob assertions at people, but I think my guess is he's certainly not surprised by this news. And again, we do have to caution though that Kiprop's saying he's not a cheat. He has a detailed story asserting that he's not. So I think we still got to wait for this one to play out.
Yeah, definitely. This Willis comments I'm sort of regarding him. He didn't mention any names. Might have been when I just said, after the press conference was over, hey, congratulations, and sort of just an off-the-cuff comment. And sort of, we've all gotten the things, like you said, from him before, that the implication is definitely some of these guys aren't doing it right. And, Asbel, you're responsible for your associations, and he's worked with the Rosa brothers. They've had, I think, 5 now prominent doping positives, maybe 6 in Kenya. And each time they sort of say, like, hey, we got this above board. We're for clean sport. And for sure, their athletes could be doping without their knowledge. But at some point, enough is enough. And, if I was doing business there, I would make sure all my athletes were clean. I would pay to have them tested outside of the protocol. I would, really get to the bottom, go to Sumgong and be like, figure out how this happened. Like, we still don't know, exactly where she got the drugs and that sort of thing. And I think if you're an agent doing business in Kenya with this many positives and you want to continue working in the sport, you got a lot to answer to. So regardless of how this turns out, there's a lot of questions for the Rosas to answer. As for Kiprop's statement today, I think the message board poster started the thread. It's wild. Got it right. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty specific. I think, first inclination is specificity, leads a lot of people to believe to innocence, but others have pointed out, Dennis Mitchell said he drank 6 beers and had sex multiple times, and that caused his testosterone to be high. So, in itself, it doesn't mean anything. Robert was asking, how you could drop EPO in a urine sample. I think really the way you would tamper with something would be to drop tainted urine into an already existing sample. It's not like you would just drop the drug into the sample. And my hoping is either way, either you would try to taint a sample, that you could do some DNA analysis and make sure, one way or another, we can find out what's right. Because, clearly Asbel has shown, I'm taking a statement at face granted, but supposedly the IAAF integrity unit's going to come out today and confirm some of these things, that he was notified in day in advance of testing. We sort of knew that went on from Reed Coolsat's Twitter post. And there's also payment from him to this tester. And it's a different culture in Kenya. People sometimes say hey, someone would be like, hey man, can you give me some money? And they're like, sure. And they text you, you can text payment money, and it's just sort of done. It's a Kenyan thing. But if you're a doping integrity officer, pay these people enough money that they don't ever need to be asking anybody for money. This is ridiculous. So just so much going on. I think this story is just getting going. wild, interesting. Kiprop just sort of laid over and said, "Oh yeah, I'm positive." We probably learn a lot from this, but it's going to have everybody paying attention the next few weeks and months. Who knows how long this plays out?
Good stuff. Can you guys hear me? Did I drop out for a while, or?
Yes, you did.
Not sure what happened. I was wondering why nobody was responding to my brilliant questions. I was saying that you can call into the show BuckShoe number, and of course, that's 724-444-7444. Enter caller ID 72655#, and we can take some calls. I'd like to sort of know what you want to talk about if you're a caller. So if you want to send us a text to our text line, 410-929-3368, 410-929-3368. Send me a text and or put it in the chat box, your name and what you want to talk about, so we can know when to have you on the call as a caller. But with the Kiprop thing, clearly, I think it helps him, the fact that, hey, these testers weren't doing everything properly. It doesn't mean, of course, that he's innocent. I mean, one of the questions I had was, well, why was he paying these people? I mean, I guess, yes, Kenya's a different culture, but he could have been that he was bribing these people all throughout to not use his urine or use, somehow make it go clean or whatever. I'd like to see a DNA analysis of this test versus past tests to make sure it's the same person. I mean, maybe they got tired. Maybe he's paying them and someone just said we can't cover up anymore. Maybe he's been dirty all along. That's one option. But, the fact that they're not doing things according to protocol is certainly going to help him. Sometimes you see this in criminal cases just because there's corrupt cops. Corrupt cop, basically O.J. Simpson gets off. If anyone who's making a murderer fan on Netflix, probably corrupt cops, but hey, the guy's still in jail right now. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get off just because, they could have been taking bribes. That could still mean he's guilty. It could mean he's innocent. We still don't know. So very, very fascinating stuff, on that front. One thing that was fascinating, and someone on the message board is like Rojo chiming in on this. If it was Rupp or Farah, he'd be going with glee. In reality, I'm getting ready for the biggest weekend meet of the weekend, the Ivy League Championships. I'll be broadcasting on ESPN3 with my host, Bill Spalding. So I was doing a lot of research for that, but I'm not going to lie, I was very upset by Kiprop. I'd heard some insinuations that he might be dirty over the last year or so, but, Jonathan found it today on Let's Run. In January 2016, we had a daily debate. If Rhodesia, Kiprop, Kimboy, or Farah tested positive, which one would upset you the most and which one would upset you the least? We started that because they were supposedly going to be retesting some samples from the 2012 Olympics. And those are obviously the big stars of the 2012 Olympics on the distance side. Well, I guess not Kiprop that year because he won in 2008. But anyways, I wrote at the time, for me, obviously the most shocking, upsetting would be Kiprop or Rhodesia. And I think one that upset me the most would be Kiprop. I might as well just hand in my fan card forever. He just looks like he has a genetic advantage, like he's a prototype that should have been on the cover of the Sports Gene. Those super skinny long legs remind me of a swimmer with huge arms. But then again, if Rhodesia went down, then they lose the best moment of the 2012 games. So it is disappointing as a fan. I mean, sometimes I wonder, people get mad when we talk about doping. Like, well, who should we believe in? To be honest, I say nobody. I mean, you have to question everything. Anything in sport, not just track and field, over the last 30 years. If it's too good to be true, it normally is. Lance Armstrong, inspirational comeback from cancer? No, he's a doper. And, even us insiders in the sport, I mean, Weldon is friends with Paula Radcliffe. She's one of the more controversial people in the sport. People think that she ran too fast. Her name is showing up in some of these biological passport things. So, we even tell you, I always say the only person you can say with 100% certainty is clean is yourself. I'm like 99.99% sure that Weldon was clean. I think I would have seen it. But then again, he did run a lot faster than me, and we have the same genetics. So who knows? But crazy
Been
stuff.
Exposed.
And yes, folks, Weldon. Let's
and actually,
actually dirty.
I did pace Paula to a world record, and so obviously I'm a biased person, and I don't know one way or the other. But she was the person actually, Robert, who first told us that. It was before she ran her first marathon. We first met her at Gerard Hartman's physiotherapy thing in London. In Ireland in 2002. 2002, yeah. And we talked a lot about who was doping, who we thought was dirty. Paul at the time, hadn't run 2:15. No one suspected anything of her at all. And now sort of she suspected, I guess some of her blood profiles were unusual, mainly because how fast she ran. And, she's the one who said, the only person you know that about for sure is yourself. So, as a fan, yeah, of course I want Asbel Kiprop to be clean. But I think also when someone like him tests positive, it's harder for us because he's been so good for a generation, for a decade. And, if he was just a flash in the pan, say McCloughy had, 2 Olympics, I guess, but somebody just sort of had a couple good races, some gong or something, then test positive and is gone. It's a sad part of the sport, but we know doping's part of it. But instead with Kiprop, it's someone who's inspired so many people for so long. As you said, his body type is so unique. He just looks different. We want to believe like, hey, yeah, a guy can do this. A guy can do this naturally. So for him to go down, it would be terrible. There's more to play out in this. Obviously, if you're not still very suspicious at this point, but you're crazy. But, the statement today, I think, threw everybody a lifeline a little bit. So who knows how this will play out.
It's not a conviction. I mean, sometimes this gets overturned, and there's a thread right now up on the message board. Kiprop might be honest and innocent, and yet Let's Watch Runners put up a dark page condemning him. We haven't put up a dark page condemning him yet. As the point said, and ended up being pretty nuanced, even if he ends up being cleared, this is shaking the faith in the sport from people. I mean, we already know that the testing in Kenya is not above board. So anyways, but the one thing that I don't really agree with is that like people think that only the Kenyans are doping. I mean, come on, we've had so many Americans dope, from Mary Slaney to Justin Gatlin to Marion Jones to Lance Armstrong. I don't think we're like the glass house. Don't throw stones. So doping is a worldwide problem, and people do it for a reason. It works. So the one thing, if this ends up being true, I hope that Renata Konova will now finally admit that EPO, yes, it does even work for the superstar athletes like Kiprop. I mean, Kiprop was a world junior champion in cross country. So, Lance Armstrong was a phenomenal athlete as a junior as well. But let's move on and start talking about some of the action. Tonight, we've got the Stanford meet. One meet on flow track on USATF Plus. That's going to be another, what is that? It's over $100, right? Flow track's another $100.
Yeah.
If you want to stream all these meets. Is that right?
I think someone added it up on, I think Darren Ravel or Lauren Fleshman added it up, and I think Darren Ravel retweeted it on Twitter that it's like maybe $380 a year if you include Flow Track, Runner Space, which Runner Space USATF, and NBC Sports Gold. If you add them all together, I think that's about what it costs.
To watch what? Track and field on the internet?
Correct.
Oh, I must say I don't pay. I think I maybe have 1 or 2 free subscriptions. People can kind of share subscriptions. I do pay for gold, and I pay for gold Premier League. But hey,
so John, it looks like the big meet, the big race, really, at least from my standpoint, is the men's 1500. We've got Matthew Centrowitz, America's best, the Olympic champion, against Paul Chelimo, who just smoked all the USA's best except for Centrowitz indoors. Who do you think has the edge in this one? Centrowitz, Chelimo, or possibly somebody else? I mean, you've got some other guys in there like Grant Fisher, Craig Ingalls, and Eric Jenkins.
Yeah, I'm going to give Chelimo the edge. Just actually, I don't know. I mean, Centro did run 3:37 in Australia, so it's but then he ran 1:53 in his next race and kind of called it quits. I mean, Centro, obviously, when they're both at their best, Centro's the better 1500 runner, and maybe it's blasphemy to bet against the Olympic champion, but I think it's just a question of like, is Centrowitz healthy and training well? Like, I don't think, I'm guessing training probably wasn't going that great in Australia if they felt like they needed to bag the trip and he could only run 1:53 for 800. Whereas Chelimo, was running really well indoors. He was the USA champion. He beat Engels, he beat Blankenship in the 1500. And he's not a pure 15. We've seen guys who aren't pure 1500 guys come in and run well at Stanford in the past. Eric Jenkins won this race last year. He's also in the field, though he's doubling back from the 800. I don't know. I feel like I would go with Chelimo just because I'm a little bit more certain about where he's at right now. And the Let's Run poll right? 88% of Let's Run Nation is taking Chelimo for the win, 26% Centrowitz, 26% is taking the field. But I think it's great to see these two guys racing. I love when some of the best Americans race each other. You got Centrowitz is the US's best miler of his generation. Chelimo is the best 5K runner of his generation. These guys going head to head makes for a very compelling race, even if it's at a fairly low stakes meet like Payton Jordan. The one thing I think is a kind of a bummer though about Payton Jordan, not only do you need a FlowTrack subscription to watch it, all the best races start after midnight on the East Coast. Centrowitz versus Chelimo, that's at 12:17 a.m. Eastern on a weeknight, a Thursday night. Women's 1500, that's at 12:10. Women's 5K, 12:24. The men's 5K, 12:44. The 10,000s, the men's 10,000, which is a decent race. You got Shadrach Kipchirchir in there. You got some good college guys running, and the NAU guys. That doesn't start until 1:40 a.m. Eastern time. This is on a Thursday night. I just think, I know Payton Jordan's all about watching time, getting times, and it's the winning isn't quite as important, but it would just be nice. This is a marquee meet on the American calendar. Put it so people can watch these races, and the fans of the sport. Who's going to be staying up to watch that race at 2 a.m. on a Thursday night?
Well, that's the thing, John. Payton Jordan released, I think it's like glorified practice. It's preseason. It's for the athletes. It's about time. It has nothing. The only thing I do with professional track and field is it lets people time trial in a good environment. But you don't hold stuff that hour online only for fans. Or we'll have the schedule. You'd move it up a little bit earlier. If there was a lot of fans clamoring to watch this, you would move it up just a little bit earlier because there's good weather at Stanford at 7 p.m. this time of year. It's not like you couldn't have it a little bit earlier. So they're not even thinking
all
of
the sun
fans.
setting. The weather, the wind gets a lot less when the sun drops. I don't have a problem with being midnight. I mean, I'd rather them run in good conditions.
Fine, have the 10K stuff, whatever there. But I feel like the meet is starting a little bit later this year. But hey, it is what it is. It's sort of one of the new things about our track is that all these sort of track geeks or strat geeks, we can really care about this meet, but the general population doesn't really care that much. And, people, we got some Europeans racing and stuff, but sort of maybe even casual sprint fans are like, wait, why do you care about this meet? Like Doha's on Friday. But for the American distance runners in particular, it's a chance to shine. And, you get a few foreigners coming over to race as well. Cause if you want pretty much guaranteed great weather for the chance to PR, this is where you come as a distance runner. So, and this year we got a great matchup because you've got Chelimo versus Centro and, a couple other guys who could actually win this race. Craig Ingles is pretty good. Colby Alexander, I think, has got the fastest time this year. And you got the young kid, Jacob Ingramson. He's not winning, I don't think. That would be a huge shocker. Eric Jenkins is one of Milrose. So it's a good one. And, then 5Ks, you got Justin Knight and crew. So it's the top collegiate meet with some pros sprinkled in of the year. So, but John, you're on a plane to England, right? You'll be able to watch. Damn it. I was hoping I wasn't going to want to be up at 1:40 a.m. writing the recaps.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's so meet because it's so late. Most people won't watch it, and they'll have to wake up and let's run and get the results. So good for that. Yeah, and the women's 5,000 is certainly interesting. You got Stanford's Vanessa Fraser. I think she was fourth in the 3,000 indoors. She's been running great. She just ran a 4:10 1,500 meter PB. So she probably will put up the NCAA leader, which is Carissa Schweizer's 15:23.21. So that should be interesting there. But really, the men's 5,000 just tonight. What?
Ali Ostrander's in that race as well. Edna Kurgat. I mean, there's a couple other people who could challenge for top collegian for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering, John, when you wrote the preview, you sort of hyped up Fraser and not Kurgat. Do you think that Fraser has the edge over Kurgat, despite the fact that Kurgat's the cross country champion?
It's kind of hard to say. I think Kurgat's a more proven championship runner. Her results are definitely better than Fraser's in the championship, but Fraser's on a home track. I think she's always run pretty well in this meet in the past. 15:25 is some pretty good running, and she just ran 4:10, so we know she's very fit. So I don't know. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Fraser run the fastest time. I think Sweden's Maraf Bardo, who is 14:49 women, will probably win. But I don't know. I think at NCAAs, I'm probably backing Kurgat, but in this one, under great conditions, I think, I'm interested to see how Fraser stacks up. 4:10 is definitely, better than anything else she's ever done at that distance. So I want to see how that translates to a 5.
Yeah, I mean, Kurgat, of course, ran 15:19 in December, right after the cross-country season. So, I think that I don't think she's raced at all outdoors. So this is her opener outdoors, which is interesting. I guess that means I guess she could run the 10,000 in conference. I would think she would be the top collegiate. And then in the men's 5,000, really, I mean, how important do you guys think this is for Justin Knight? I mean, there's a lot of rumors that Reebok is going to be starting a professional team. Some thought that Chris Fox could be the coach of that team, and Justin Knight could be a big part of that. Do you think it's important that he runs a fast time here to sort of increase his marketability, or is that sort of everybody knows he's a stud and he's going to get paid no matter what he does?
I think it's the latter. Unless he breaks the NCAA record or something, we know he's pretty good. Or excuse me, really good. I'm just sort of saying that off the cuff, but he's one of the best in the NCAA. I mean, right now he's the best, and one of the, I don't know how you want to rank him all time. Doesn't have as many titles as some other guys, but he's a very good runner, successful at the World Championships. Good smiles, Canadian, so doesn't have quite the marketability of an American athlete, but he's gone in the U.S. system, so I think he'll be well sought after and well compensated.
So enough for Stanford. I mean, that'll be over. We'll wake up. We'll see the results and the times, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I am really excited for some reason for Doha, and for me, the big excitement is I want to see Jenny Simpson. I want to see her attack this 3,000 record. Yes, people, I do get fired up when I see the name Mary Slaney and she's in the Hall of Fame. I think that's a disgrace. I don't want to hear about she almost got off. She was convicted of doping. I don't want her in the Hall of Fame. So I'd love to see her 8:25, I think it is, 3,000 record. It stood for like 34 years. I want to see that wiped off the books. Jenny Simpson last week at Drake got their U.S. 2-mile record, but that only converts to about 8:35. I think her PR is around 8:29. So she needs to run both the PR and about 10 seconds faster than she did last week. But she'll have great competition in Doha. The only issue is it's probably going to be in the high 80s race time. So, John, just based on the temperature alone, I was going to rule it out. But then you sort of showed me the history in the past of how these people have run really fast, world leaders in the past in this type of heat in Doha. So give me your best percentage chance. What do you think the odds are that Jenny Simpson breaks Mary Slaney's 3,000 record?
I'll put it at about 20%. I think she's got a shot for sure. Because she ran 9:16 at Drake for 2 miles, so that's, like you said, it's about 8:35. But for you give her a better field of women to compete against. You take away the wind. She was complaining about there was a headwind on the home straight at Drake. I think that's definitely worth some time. And then if she's not running solo, I think her fitness is probably close. She does seem to be saying that she's never really been that fit this early, particularly for the 3,000. Normally she gears up to focus on the 1,500, but I think, Drake wanted her to do something different, try to run the 2 mile. So, she's sort of killing two birds with one stone, heading over to Doha to capitalize on that fitness. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, her PR is 8:29 from a few years ago. And it's not out of the question. I do think generally when you're betting on people to like run these hard records, I mean, Mary Slaney, that it's been on the book since the 80s. That's not an easy record to get, but I expect she'll run a faster equivalent performance than Doha. I think it could be close, but it's also, a question of what would the other women do in the field? Helen Obiri ran 8:20 here a couple of years ago, which some people view as sort of the clean world record outdoors, but I don't know if she's in that kind of shape. She didn't look she looked kind of off her game at World Indoors, but then she ran well at Commonwealths, won the 5K there. So if there's Obiri and there's a couple other women like Letesenbet Gide from Ethiopia, she was the world junior XC champ last year. If some of those women commit to running a fast pace, I think Simpson has a chance. But there's also a chance the race is won in like 8:28 if they slow down a little bit. I don't think the heat will have a huge effect because, like you mentioned, they have run fast here in the past. And it's like an 8.5 minute race. I think it's more of a factor for 5K, 10K marathon than it is 3K.
Yeah, John. Well, I'm surprised you said 20%. I was going to say, thought you'd say higher. But then now you're saying not the heat. You don't think the heat's going to be the reason. I was going to ask you, let's say it was Stanford type conditions, 60-degree weather. What would you put her odds then?
I would probably put it more around 40, 45. I mean, even with the weather, it's just a question of like, are people going to go with that pace and can she hang on to it? Because if you fall behind or you go to sleep for a couple laps or people get focused about who's going to win the race as opposed to hitting the time, you slow down. And 8:25, you need to be on it from the get-go to run 8:25. Not a lot of women run that. So I do think if she doesn't get it, I think it's going to be more because people either focus on the racing or they're not right on the rabbits, as opposed to, she might have that fitness within her, but bringing it out, you're going to need good conditions in the race.
All right, John, I'm going to give you a little homework assignment as the podcast continues. Please try to find the 3,000 winning times in Doha for the women the last couple times they've had it. So that I think that'll help people sort of understand how it seems to me like they always go for it in 3,000. So, but they've got a lot of other good races there in Doha. I mean, we've got the men's 800 and we've got America's Olympic medalist. I was reading the preview. I'm like, wait a minute. Murphy won an Olympic medal? Like that's what Nick Simmons and these guys generation have been dreaming of. I mean, Johnny Gray, and this kid did it while basically in college. He's done the dream. And yet here we are just not even 2 years later. And he's sort of, people view him as a struggling pro in the sense that he didn't make Worlds last year and didn't make the U.S. indoor team this year. So Clayton Murphy, sort of a big race for him to try to get the momentum on his side since he's joined the Nike Oregon project. He'll be racing in the 800 against world indoor champion Adam Kazat of Poland. So a lot going on there. That's certainly an exciting race. And
in all fairness to Johnny Gray, he did win an Olympic bronze medal as well. Got to get that in there.
What was his nickname? Showtime or Mr. Showtime? Or am I making that up?
Think of it in a second. Johnny was pretty amazing. Because
Robert, just for the record, I looked up some of the previous results. We've got Almaz Ayana ran 8:23 there in 2016. Helen Obiri 8:20 in 2014, but in 2012, Vivian Chariot won in 8:46, which I would say for her is pretty glacial.
Oh wow! If Ayana's only running 8:23, that makes it seem harder than I realized. But and of course Emmanuel Correa, the former UTEP star, is in that thing. And considering that his Cerrone of UTEP just broke the collegiate record last week, you've got to think the Correa's in 6-6 shape. I mean, he was running. What did he run indoors, John? 1:44.21, right?
1:44.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I mean, I clearly, wow, Sean is the world indoor champ. My pick for the win, career. Walden, who do you have?
Yeah, for sure. I think until somebody beats him this year, you pick him. I'm curious, to see what Clayton Murphy will do. I don't think you go into this meet unless there's some thinking you can do well. And I applaud the NLP group. Alberto puts the guys in, the best races. And they're not afraid to race the best. And they also compete with the mindset that they can be the best. So, you're an Olympic medalist. You better be thinking, I can go to Doha and be the best, I mean, if you're a Kenyan or an Ethiopian 800 guy, you're not going to get paid unless you go to those meets. You're not going to go to some I don't know, Kansas Relays or Drake, or, Drake's got some money, some bunch of, B team meets and make a living. You go compete against the best. So I think it's great that he's flying over and giving it a go. I mean, ran the 400 last week, and people are criticizing his time for being too slow, but doesn't mean much at all. I guess he's got to be able to come through in 50 seconds. That's kind of interesting thing, but I think he should be able to do it. Come through in 51, see what happens.
Well, Let's Run Nation is not very high in Mr. Murphy's chances.
He ran at once.
77% are picking fourth or lower for Murphy in terms of finish.
It's a Diamond League. It's about right. I feel like he ran 147 and got beat at Mount Sac. So by a guy from Mexico who most of us have never heard of. So this isn't the Clayton Murphy of last year. We blitzed at 143 at Mount Sac, and we're like, oh my God, this guy could run 141 before the season's out or something crazy. Then he attempted the double, and you fly a little close to the sun, sometimes it bites you. And I applaud him going for the double last year. He's still super young, and looks like things are going. 147 is not that bad first time out. So, as you said, I'm very excited. The Diamond League's back. It's 2 hours professional track and field at its finest. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it's sort of what the Arkansas meet hoped it would be. Actually, 2 hours for the whole meet and exciting. And the results kind of mean something because there's prize money at stake and points in the Diamond League thing. Unlike let's make up a meet and have 25 events per gender, but only count 7 of them. Have teams like Stanford come, but only enter like a couple of events, and then act like people are going to care about the score. Don't get me started. But let's move on. We're running out of time. To me, the race of the weekend, and I think we're going to start promoting more of other things because you can't just be a distance fan. You need to watch all of track and field. If you're at the meet for a couple hours, you're going to want to watch other stuff. This men's 200 in Doha is unreal. You've got Noah Lyles, America's great hope. I think the future of sprinting. 1990 last year, I think still as a teenager. Maybe he was 20, but so young, so good. Diamond League champion. You've got the world champion of Ramil Guliev of Turkey, 1988 PB. But to make it more interesting, you've got Omar McLeod. One of the greatest hurdlers on the planet, the Olympic champion in the hurdles, who is also the only guy to go sub 13 in the hurdles and sub 10 in the 100. He's stepping up to the 200. His PR is only 20.49, but this is fascinating to see what he can do. Then we've got Andre DeGrasse, an Olympic medalist, the 1980 PB, and then Dream Richards, I think, also has a world championship medal. We're so used to the sprinters avoiding each other. Admittedly, not all of these guys are 200 meter specialists, but to see all of these names, it's very refreshing, sort of, with Usain Bolt not there for the first time. I guess this will be the first race of the post Usain Bolt era. To have all these guys clashing is really exciting for me as a track fan. John, I have a strong pick on who I think is going to win this race. Who is your pick in the 200?
I think we're both thinking the same thing here, Robert. Noah Lyles. This guy's just,
going out on a limb, John.
Like you said last year, he ran 19.9 at age 19 in Shanghai. Looked like he was, a lock to make the US team pretty much. I think a lot of people pegged him for a medal in London, but he had an injury. He had to withdraw in the middle of USA's. Doesn't race from middle of June until the Diamond League final on September 1st. So that's 10 weeks. Then he comes back and wins against everyone, including Guliev, who just won Worlds, to win the Diamond League final. So the fact that he could do that after missing, going 10 weeks without racing, that's pretty impressive. And then if you look at what he's done since then, indoors, he got down to 657 in the 60, made the final at USA. Or no, didn't make the final, I don't think, but he ran pretty well. And then he ran a windy 986 in the 100 last month. And again, there was a 4.1 tailwind. This was in Claremont, or Claremont or Gainesville, somewhere down in Florida. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think he's got probably even better speed. I think he's definitely got a better start than he had in 2017. This guy, there's some other good guys in here. Like you said, Richards is good. Nathaniel Mitchell-Blake, he anchored Great Britain to gold in the 4x1 last year. Guliev's the world champion. He rarely lost at all in 2017. But, DeGrasse, I think DeGrasse at his best will be a great matchup against Lyles. But DeGrasse only ran 10:15 at Drake last week. He got only 4th place. So I think I'm picking Noah Lyles. I think we could see something pretty special, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting how we sell Guliev short, but he was the world champ. But I think, it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around a Turkish sprinter. But that should be a good one. The 100-meter hurdles and women should be great as well. Brianna Rollins, now Brianna McNeil, takes on Kenny Harrison, and they're like, leaps and bounds better than everybody else recently, just in terms of time. Dawn Harper Nelson, the great champion who announced her retirement at the end of this season, is in that one as well. So, there's a lot of great sprint action, field action. I think the women's pole vault is the highlight with Sandy Morris, and is
Morris
Jen
and Stephanie? Yeah.
What? Is Jen in there as well?
Morris and Stefanidi going up against each other. I don't know about Jen Sure, but Morris has been jumping pretty well. She won Drake the weekend. She won World Indoors. So I think Morris looks like the favorite and is in good form. I think people are wondering if she can go over 490 or maybe even challenge 5 meters.
And then on Sunday morning, talking about the people that stay up late tonight until like 3 a.m. They're going to have to get up at like 3 a.m. to watch Galen Rupp in the Prague Marathon. Jonathan, what time is the race?
It's 9 a.m. a local time, which I believe is 3 a.m. Eastern time.
So West Coasters, you can just stay up late, have a few drinks, and watch Galen Rupp. I'm very excited about this. I was thinking after the race, after Boston, I'm like, look, he didn't even make it 20 miles. Why would you waste that fitness? And Alberto, it's weird. People think I have Alberto. From a coaching standpoint, Alberto and I think very similarly on a lot of levels. I think that there are definitely big medical things that are impacting a lot of runners. I had a pin relays champion at Cornell. I thought the world of this kid in terms of talent, but his iron level was always low and we could just never get it up. But I'm like, this kid was a superstar in high school, and just, for whatever reason we couldn't figure it out. I'm just not willing to go maybe as far as others, to feel good every day. But anyways, he's got Rupp on the start line. He's not going to waste that 59-minute half marathon fitness. He's going for it in Prague. And the nice thing about Rupp is, hey, his PR is only 209, so he certainly should be able to beat that. The question really is, how fast does Galen Rupp go? I think, the people on the message board sort of like to troll around and say Rupp's only run 209, therefore he's a 209 guy. If you think that 209 is Rupp's potential in the marathon, you're an idiot. He's a 26-minute guy. He is a world marathon major champion. He certainly, just by the fact that he's a world marathon major, you'd think he'd be able to run 206 at a minimum. And only 2 Americans have ever broken 206. Ryan Hall, 204.58, if you count the 180 to Boston, and Khalid Kanuchi, 205.38. We can the next best American is actually Dathan Ritzenheim. Colin Kanuchi have numerous ranks. Of course, Kanuchi was a world record holder before he even became an American. So people want to talk about American born and this and that. But the next best time, Ryan Hall ran 206.17. If you're talking about American born on a certified course, that would be the American born record. Kanuchi's 205.38 was also in Chicago, so that would count. But again, he had a world record for another country before he ran that 205.38. But Ritzenheim is third at 207.47. So guys, if you look at, if this was a Chicago or a London and it was rabbited, if I was Salazar and I was rabbiting Rupp, I would put it at 206 flat pace and hope that he could pick it up off that and run in the 205s in an ideal situation. Obviously, this is Prague. I don't think that's going to be the case. If you look at it, only once, and I was very excited. I'm like, oh, he's going to run 206, 205. But if you actually look at the history, only once in the last 5 years has Prague been run in under 207. It's 208.47 last year, 207.24 in 2016, 208.32, 208.07, 208.51. Those are the last 5 years. Now, in 2012, it was 206.25. The year before that was 207.07. And actually, 2010, wow, 205.39. So there is hope. If 2010, 205s weren't as common as they are now. And Elliot Kiptanui ran 205 in Prague. So I was starting to rule out a 205, but maybe not. And with the NOP, assuming they rabbit, to me, the big question I have, I can't predict the time because I don't know what the rabbit is going to be. And John, it appears that you have some inside information on what this race is going to be rabbited at. John, please tell us what the race organizers told you when you asked them for the inside scoop.
Well, I was told specifically it's not inside information, but their answer. So I asked them, hey, can you let me know, is it going to be rabbited? What pace? Is there a specific pace that Rupp has suggested? Anything like that. And they got back to me and said, hello. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to provide any internal information about Prague Marathon. It wouldn't be appropriate and it could wrongly affect our public image. Thank you for your understanding. Best regards, Jan Dvorak, office support.
So there you have it. John folks got them in trouble because
not a lot of insight there.
Yes, the Let's Run poster found Rupp on the start line. So John contacted Prague. They said, "Yep, Rupp is racing."
Yeah.
Then Rupp's agent contacted us and was like, "Well, it wasn't supposed to be official. We're still haven't decided yet."
No, we're not allowed to. Don't get into the details of that, Robert. We're not supposed to. I was asked not to sort of reveal some of the mechanics there, so let's keep that off the record for now.
Okay, well, I slipped up, but yes, they're being very private now that things got out ahead of time. NOP wasn't allowed to, it wasn't the one that broke that Rupp is running Prague. It was some kid on the message board. So congrats to the poster on the message board who broke that story to the world. Amazing stuff. So that's why Let's Run. We love you, the fans, the visitors. We don't claim to be all that much smarter, just a little bit smarter than your average poster, as witnessed by Jonathan and I's recent crushing it on the prediction contest. But Weldon, you're a former marathoner, sub 220 marathon, and only one on the podcast that's broken 220 in the marathon. What do you think Galen Rupp can do on Sunday, and how excited are you for this race? For me, this is the race of the weekend. This is the one I want to see, but I'm not going to get up at 3 a.m. to watch it.
Yeah, more likely to get up for this one than the Stanford. And I guess I could stay up late for Stanford. It's a little bit easier, but I think this is a great race for him. He's not going to London. It's not a world record, but as you said, they've run 205 in Prague 10 years ago. And he's got some good competition. Sisse Lima ran 204.08 this year in Dubai. And the crazy thing is that got him, I think, 5th place in Dubai, which is crazy. But, so let's say they want to go sub 206. I think that's doable. I think that's right in Rupp's wheelhouse. It wouldn't be shocking to me if he ran 205 or better. Depends on the pacing, obviously. And you're like, oh, Lima, he ran 204.08. I've never heard of him. Or you're not that familiar with him. Rupp destroyed him last year in Chicago, the last 10K. Lima finished 4th in 211.08. And Galen ran 209.20. So they've raced before, and Galen came out on top, beating a guy who would go on to run 204, 3 months later. So I think it's sort of fortuitous if Galen wasn't going to win Boston, that he could come back right after this. He's got to be fresh. Boston didn't take anything out of him physically. He wouldn't be doing this if it did. He ran a very slow pace for not even 20 miles. So, I think he wins the race, and I think he runs. I think the pacing is what we need to know. Do they go out? I mean, gosh, to get under 205, you got to go out, probably 102.45 or better. So it's probably not going to happen. I'm going to say 205 winning time, Galen Rupp. What's the American record again?
205.38.
Yes, 205.36. Galen Rupp, American record on Sunday.
Well, I think you're being a little too optimistic there, Weldon. I gotta say. I mean, I've also looked at. I'm right. I'm getting our preview together for the race, and looking at the conditions. The conditions are pretty similar to what we had in London. High is going to be 71, and low 48. Where London, the high was 75, the low was 48. And
okay, let me take that
back. There's also
right
wind.
After making that comment, John, I then typed in Prague weather. You started speaking. I had not checked the weather. I want to backtrack then if the weather's that hot. I'll go with the 206 something winning time.
Yeah, I think I was going to say somewhere in the 206, probably 30, give or take 15 seconds. if I were Rupp, I think 63 is plenty fast for the first half, and see how you feel from there. You know, if you're still feeling good, press on, and hopefully you'll have a rabbit to take you another maybe 5 or 10K. If not, maybe back it off and just sort of focus on the wind. On the wind. But, you know, the wind is about 12 miles an hour out of the east, northeast, which means he'll have it in his back for the last 5K or so, but he'll also have to run into it for a bit of it. So, I don't know. I mean, yeah, if this was perfect situation, I think Rupp, given, you know, how well he ran his build-up and everything he was saying before Boston, I think 205, even 204, not out of the question. But right now, I think there are too many other variables. I would say probably 206 30-ish. That'd be my guess. I do think he wins the race, though. I think he's a good racer.
Yeah, I agree. Rupp going to win, and I think he's going to run pretty fast. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't. So it should be interesting. And before we drop off, folks, let's talk about the 2020 Olympic trials. I don't follow the intricacies. I know Weldon's gone to the USA convention because it just seems to me, and I know it's easy to complain about bureaucracies, but what these people do, it just seems like they do whatever the hell they want to do. Like, okay, Vinalana, we're not sure about how we got world, so we're going to suspend you for as long as we want. And they award the trials to Mount SAC. Everybody knows that they're going to have a $65 million renovation. There's been some lawsuits. Hey, this is California. Environmentalists are crazy out there. And what do? They just take the trials away from Mount SAC without even telling them, like, hey, or even asking them, are you going to be ready by 2020? Comes out today in Scott Reed article. Says, they said, look, we're going to have the stadium ready. These lawsuits are not a big deal. They didn't even tell us. They just called us up. They didn't even, ask us. They just called us up and said, trials are gone. To me, this seems very suspicious. Obviously, Eugene becomes a front runner. Eugene doesn't even have a stadium either, and they have to build a $200 million stadium between now and 2020, which is harder to do, people. Build a $200 million stadium in the next 2 years or build a $60 million renovation. Do a $60 million renovation. I think the answer is obvious, the $60 million renovation. This, to me, I was wondering, I don't trust USATF for based on past actions. And I think it's like, do they get some direct, people, basically because people view that Nike owns USATF, and I see why people think that, but did they get some directive from Uncle Phil saying, hey, I'm not going to spend $200 million, a lot of it my own money, to renovate Hayward Field unless we get the trials back. So then you can have two birds with one stone, 2020 trials, 2021 Worlds. And that's not what I want. I want the excitement for the trials in 2020 somewhere else. And then Eugene, hey, make it a Mecca, make it Worlds, make every U.S. fan wanting to go to Worlds in 2021 to see the damn new stadium. If they all go in 2020 for the trials, which honestly is going to be a bigger deal for a lot of U.S. track fans, the trials are more exciting than Worlds for a lot of people. They're not going to want to go back in 2021. I'm not going to say they're not going to sell out. Of course, it's Eugene. They'll probably still sell out. But to me, the trials should be somewhere else than in Mount SAC unless they have real good reason. And I would wait until the end of the year. I mean, if by January 1st, 2019, you're not positive you can have it, hey, you've still got almost 18 months to get ready for the trials. Weldon, you follow this USGS stuff. Do I have a reason to be mad or what?
Yeah, you have a reason to be mad. I think your theory is a little bit conspiratorial without evidence, but with this group, that's what we all start thinking. The board has shown, I would argue, very poor leadership with a lot of decisions. They don't listen to the members' wishes, and they're supposed to serve, really represent the members. The Lanana sort of sacking was sort of very suspicious because everyone already knew his conflicts of interest, and sort of, there's a big faction that thinks Steve Miller sort of wants to do what he wants to do, and he's in charge of the board and it's got the board's votes, and so he can do it. But then, some of the things that I think don't make sense. So why award the trials originally to Mount SAC if Uncle Phil's wielding this power behind? But the stadium was in limbo then. Maybe it wasn't certain. They couldn't award it to a certain stadium. But it's highly unprofessional, right? You think, like, we have this partner. It's a huge deal to win the trials. You should go discuss with them the lawsuit. USATF legal should say, hey, we want to know what's going on with the lawsuit, and at least sit down beforehand and say, look, we don't think this is going to get done. You need to present to us why it is. But just to sort of come in and swoop and say this thing is gone, it's ridiculous. The board voted supposedly unanimously supporting this. It would be interesting. I want to try to reach out to like Lauren Fleshman. Some other people came on the board. Ryan Wilson, the athlete, ex-hurdler. They came on the board when Vin was elected president, and they were talking about this new era, and things seem to be exactly the same. And people are very just suspicious, and rightfully so. And there's a lot of now you have Eugene 2021, some of the stuff surrounding that under investigation. This thing happens with no notice, and it doesn't give anyone any confidence for USATF. Yet Max Siegel, is getting $1 million bonus last year, and USATF actually was in the red last year. So I don't think it's run that well. I wish Max or somebody, the president of the board, Miller, had gone down there and relayed the information, or at least try to work with their partner. Just to do it this way, to me, reeks of unprofessionalism. I was most suspicious of the press release. It talks about 2 lawsuits. Well, one lawsuit's been settled. Like, that has nothing to do with this at all. Like, who cares if there was a past lawsuit that was settled? Like, settled means settled. You can't bring it back up. Like, and construction, apparently this current lawsuit, from my understanding, it's very limited. This construction is still going on. We had people emailing us, when the first lawsuit was filed and actually had an injunction, Mount SAC ignored it and kept just grading the material. They didn't consider that lawsuit really too much of a concern. And the second lawsuit is more about funding it, like where the money has to come from. It's from a taxpayers group, and it has not stopped construction. So everything points to the stadium being ready by 2020. And if that's the case, why pull the trials? I feel like you could, 6 months notice, you could move the trials somewhere. Come on. Unless it's in Eugene, where, I feel like Eugene's not ready. There's too many questions for Eugene. So where are the trials going to be in 2020?
Well, Yes 21 wants to know what we think about Sacramento. We went well and competed in the trials in Sacramento. I have no problem with the trials in Sacramento. This is what I say about the trials. The trials should almost never be in Eugene, or once every 12 years maybe. Eugene always supports track, but the rest of America will support an Olympic trials. You could have an Olympic trials in freaking ice curling, and people would show up because it's the Olympic trials. Americans are patriots. Even in the year 2018, we went to the trials in high school. This is how we became track fans. Our aunt and uncle live in New Orleans. The trials were in New Orleans in 92. As a kid, or as a high school senior, I thought there was a big crowd. It seemed well attended. You could have it in New Orleans. You could have it in Atlanta, Sacramento. I mean, these places aren't necessarily, ideal weather-wise. Some of them are a little bit hot. I mean, that's what makes a Sacramento cools down at night. California, really, LA is even better. Eugene can be hot in the day and cool at night. I mean, some of those things. If you really want to get innovative, if Max Siegel is such a freaking genius to deserve a 7-figure salary, I thought about this. This sounds crazy, but you could have 2 trials or even 3. You could have a field event trials. You could have the shot put in Idaho, or some guy from a farm's hometown, and have 7,000 fans going nuts for the shot put and put that on TV, and then have the sprinting in LA and the distance running in Eugene. I mean, yes, then you're kind of separating track, and there's winners and losers, and some events are eventually going to be screwed around. So I wouldn't do it all the time, but let's think outside the box, people. Let's think outside the box. But it's been an hour, and we promised to try to stick to that.
State my objection. I think that's a pretty horrible idea.
The what?
I'm just going to state my objection. I think having trials all in different parts of the country, having the shot put trials on a farm in Idaho, have you been drinking? That sounds like a terrible idea.
Well, I actually have been drinking, folks. The Sierra Nevada Sidecar Orange IPA is exquisite. I love it, folks. I love it. Folks, I'm not sure if you've realized there's been an increase in quality of LetsRun.com recently. It's because I've been on part-time paternity break. I've only been working part-time recently. So John's been picking up the slack. Thank you, John, for the census. Guest 21 says, I'll be back in full force zone, folks. I'll be back in full force. So I'll be back on the forums giving you what you want. Some controversial opinions. Everybody else is so peace.
Site's been great. Record traffic while Robert was gone. But real quick, we need an official beer of LetsRun.com. So anyone out there got any ideas, let us know. And there's one more race this weekend, I think, of note. Gwen Jorgensen's running the USA Half Marathon Championships. I think sort of real quickly, she's run 15:15 for 5K. I just put that in the Jack Daniels calculator, and it comes out to a 1:09:48 half marathon. So I think the question for Gwen is, how fast does she run? Where that puts her. She's not wasting any time coming back from maternity. I actually talked to her husband, Pat Lemieux, this month, just about Let's Run in general. He called me, and it was pretty interesting. And I'm like, you guys aren't wasting any time, going after this. And he's like, we don't have much time. But they don't have a running approach going to this. They just have a completely fresh approach. And they're like, we want to get in a couple marathons. And the idea is they keep improving in each one. And, they try to make the team. I think she's already sort of one of the most popular runners out there, and it'll be interesting to see what she does on Sunday in Pittsburgh. So that's another thing to watch. Action-packed weekend starting tonight, Stanford, then Doha, then make sure I'm getting the order right here, then Prague, then Gwen in Pittsburgh. Did I miss something in there?
I think we're good.
And maybe some more Asbel Kiprop conspiracy theories. So if you're just joining us live, we'll be posting this on demand afterwards. The audio actually should be better on demand because it won't be going through the phones. But John, have a good time. John will be away from some of the action, going to watch Premier League soccer. Congratulations, John. It looks like your team, Brighton Hove Albion, will be in the Premier League next year. John and I are both soccer fans. Crystal Palace is my team. They will be staying up as well. But, track and field fans, this has been a sort of dark 2 days, but the band keeps marching on. Like, I'm excited about the action this time. The other thing, actually, one of the reasons I mentioned Pat Lemieux was one thing he said is like, look, we're also coming at track in a different era. He goes, I think it's cleaner than it's ever been. And I was like, well, actually, that's probably true. The drug testing is better than it's ever been. It's far from perfect. There's still a lot of questions to be asked by Asbel Kiprop's positive, but if he does test positive, long term, it's good for the sport because we're getting cheats out of it. And that's what I take away right now. So for Robert Johnson, for Jonathan Galt, this is Weldon signing off. Thanks, everybody.